Dante's Inferno, a guided descent into the 9 circles of the self, Part 1. What if the places you fear most are not punishments waiting to devour you, but secret gateways into the parts of yourself you have never dared to meet? What if hell is not a location beneath the earth, but the inner territory we enter when we finally stop running from our own shadow? And what if the path to heaven does not ascend in a straight line toward light, but first spirals downward into the darkness we spend a lifetime avoiding? This is where Dante's journey begins, not in triumph, but in confusion. Not at a soaring summit, but lost in a dim, tangled wood where familiar roads have vanished. He is not cursed nor damned. He is simply a human being who has wandered away from his center. His spiritual compass has fallen silent, and he stands at the threshold of awakening precisely because he can no longer pretend that he knows his way. There is something quietly profound about this beginning. Dante does not begin his sacred journey because he is holy. He begins because he is honest. He allows himself to see that he is lost. And that single moment of clarity, fragile, trembling, becomes the very doorway to transformation. In life, most people never reach this doorway because they refuse to admit they are lost. They distract themselves, numb themselves, narrate stories of certainty, or blame the world around them. To confess I do not know where I am takes more courage than many realize. It exposes the ego. It humbles the self. It invites change. But that admission awakens something ancient within. And so, in his confusion, Dante is not abandoned. He is met. From the shadows appears Virgil, not as a rescuer sent to erase his suffering, but as the quiet embodiment of reason, clarity, and inner guidance. Virgil is the part of consciousness that still remembers the straight way even when the outer self does not. He is the wisdom beneath panic, the calm beneath fear, the voice that says,
"You are capable of walking this path, and I will help you see how."
Virgil does not take Dante by the hand and lift him to safety. He does not promise an escape from difficulty. He tells him the difficult truth. To rise, you must first descend. To reclaim wholeness, you must face what you have rejected. To meet the light honestly, you must meet your darkness without turning away. This is the universal law of inner work. You cannot integrate what you refuse to acknowledge. You cannot transcend what you suppress. Whatever you exile from consciousness becomes your underworld, and sooner or later you must enter. So Dante steps forward, guided not by certainty, but by the willingness to look.
Together, they approach the gate of hell.
Above it is inscribed the famous line,
"Abandon all hope, you who enter here."
Many interpret this as a command to despair, but the deeper meaning is far more subtle. The hope that must be abandoned is not the hope of transformation, but the hope that things will improve without change. It is the childish hope that truth can be found without discomfort, that awakening can occur without sacrifice, that one can keep one's illusions and still find peace. To abandon such hope is not pessimism, it is maturity. It is the moment the seeker stops asking life to be easier and starts asking to see more clearly. Passing through the gate marks a psychological threshold.
Dante is no longer looking away from what disturbs him. He is willing to witness the structures of consciousness that cause suffering, and he is willing to learn.
Immediately inside, he encounters souls who are neither heroic nor monstrous. They are the uncommitted, those who lived without ever truly choosing. They never stood for truth, never opposed falsehood, never pursued love deeply enough to be changed by it. They drifted through life, blown by circumstance, avoiding responsibility, avoiding depth. Their condition after death mirrors their condition in life. Aimless, directionless, caught in a perpetual whirl of meaninglessness. Their torment is not fire but futility. A life never claimed becomes an eternity without anchor. This is the first great lesson of the descent. Indecision is its own form of bondage. To refuse choice is still a choice, and it leads nowhere. Virgil urges Dante onward. To learn, he must continue. They reach the river Acheron,
A symbolic boundary that separates the familiar from the realm of consequence. Here Dante meets Charon, the ferryman who transports souls to their appointed places.
Charon initially refuses to carry Dante because he is still alive, revealing a deeper truth.
The descent is meant for the living, for those who seek to awaken before death.
Hell is not a place one is sentenced to.
It is a landscape of understanding, a map of the soul that can be walked while breath still fills the lungs.
Reason alone, represented by Virgil, grants Dante access. There is no force, no trickery, only the authority of inner readiness. The crossing completes the separation from denial. The descent into truth begins in earnest.
The first circle, limbo. No flames, no screams, only a tranquil sadness.
Here reside those who lived with honor, but without awakened consciousness. They lacked the capacity or the opportunity to touch the divine directly. Their lives were good yet incomplete, shaped more by intellect than by transcendence. Their state teaches this.
Moral behavior is not the same as spiritual realization. Goodness is beautiful, but without inner awakening, the soul remains hungry.
Dante honors these souls, but he cannot remain with them. Their virtue is admirable, but it is not the destination. He descends further.
The second circle, lust. A raging storm sweeps souls without rest, flinging them through darkness without direction.
Their punishment is not arbitrary, it is the externalization of their inner condition. In life, they allowed their passions to toss them uncontrollably. Now the winds of their own desire continue the motion. This is the law of correspondence.
The inner state becomes the outer world. What rules you from within will rule you from without.
Dante listens to Francesca, whose story is touching, poetic, tragic. He feels compassion. But within her beauty is a warning. The narratives we craft about our suffering can trap us more deeply than the suffering itself. We can fall in love with the story of our pain and never ask how to move beyond it. Compassion must walk with discernment. Without it, empathy becomes seduction.
The third circle, gluttony.
Cold, relentless rain pours on souls lying in mud, their hunger never satisfied. Cerberus, the three-headed beast of appetite, torments them endlessly. Their lives were dominated by the search for fullness in the wrong places, an attempt to feed the inner void with outer consumption.
But no amount of external pleasure can satisfy an internal hunger. Gluttony is not about food alone.
It is every excess we use to escape what we do not want to feel. The teaching here is not asceticism. It is balance, presence, knowing when enough is enough.
The fourth circle, greed. Two groups push enormous weights against each other, the hoarders and the squanderers.
Both are trapped in the same cycle. Obsession with possession. Their suffering illustrates that fixation on material accumulation, whether through clinging or wasting, leads nowhere.
Greed is not about wealth.
It is about identification. When what you own becomes who you are, you lose the ability to move freely. The lesson is stewardship, to hold the world gently, knowing nothing truly belongs to us.
The fifth circle, wrath. A swamp of violence and resentment.
On the surface, the enraged strike each other relentlessly. Beneath, the sullen drown in bitterness, silent and suffocating.
Two forms of anger, one explosive, one suppressed, each becomes its own prison.
Anger itself is not the enemy. It is a signal. But when anger becomes identity, we can no longer see clearly. The marsh leads to the walls of Dis, the deeper realm where sins of intention and deception reside. Here the journey takes a harder turn.
The guardians refuse passage. Dante trembles.
His courage falters. Virgil stands with him, but reason alone cannot move these gates. A higher force intervenes, symbolizing that the deepest shadows cannot be navigated by intellect alone. The soul must allow guidance beyond the rational mind. And so the gates open. The descent continues.
Part 2.
Beyond the gates of Dis, the atmosphere changes. What Dante has seen so far were states born from ungoverned impulse, desire, indulgence, avoidance, and anger. They were recognizable, relatable, almost human in their clumsiness. But now he enters a deeper territory, a realm shaped not by instinct, but by intention.
Here dwell those who use their will not simply to indulge themselves, but to harm, manipulate, or distort truth itself.
The air grows heavier. Reason alone, symbolized by Virgil, does not stride here with effortless authority. Even he seems more cautious. The soul realizes that the consequences of conscious choices run far deeper than the consequences of unconscious ones.
This is the first great recognition of the lower hells.
What you do deliberately carries a weight that echoes beyond your lifetime. They proceed into the sixth circle, the realm of the heretics, those who denied the deeper nature of consciousness.
These souls are entombed in blazing coffins, their minds sealed within their own final convictions.
This hell is philosophical, not theatrical. The fire is not external punishment, it is the burning rigidity of a worldview that refused to allow growth. They chose to define reality only through the lens of the material, rejecting the life of the spirit, denying anything beyond the grasp of logic. Now they are locked within the tomb of their own certainty. This circle teaches that belief is not merely an opinion, it is a force that shapes the boundaries of our experience. When belief becomes inflexible, the soul suffocates within its own walls.
The heretics are not wicked. They are imprisoned by the arrogance of thinking they already know.
Growth requires curiosity. Curiosity requires humility. The moment a person stops questioning, their evolution halts.
Dante listens to one of the souls, Farinata, who rises from his fiery tomb to speak with a calm, fixed dignity.
Even in torment, he clings to the identity that defined him in life, his politics, his loyalties, his certainty. Virgil leads Dante onward, deeper still.
Below the heretics lies a realm of violence, the seventh circle divided into 3 rings. The first ring holds those violent against others, tyrants, murderers, warmakers.
They stand submerged in a river of boiling blood. The deeper their violence, the deeper they are sunk. Yet the symbolism is not only of punishment, it reflects truth. Those who spill blood become immersed in blood, their inner world shaped by the force they unleashed.
Violence is a fire that burns outward and inward simultaneously.
No one escapes its heat. But Dante observes something more nuanced. The centaurs who guard this circle are neither cruel nor chaotic. They represent the principle that even violence has a law, that all consequences are measured.
The journey continues into the second ring, where those violent against themselves reside, the suicides.
Their souls have taken root as twisted trees. Their speech emerges only when broken.
They are trapped within forms that reflect their deepest decision, to silence themselves rather than face the burden of their inner pain.
It is diagnosis. In life, their suffering was so overwhelming that they saw no path forward. But by turning against themselves, they severed the bridge between the soul and its unfolding.
Here Dante learns that pain does not disappear when avoided. It transforms.
The inner becomes outer. The emotional becomes physical. Their leaves are torn by harpies, not as punishment, but as the visible echo of anguish that once tore them from within. This circle teaches a truth that modern psychology echoes. Despair must be witnessed, not hidden. Pain must be given language, not silence.
The third ring holds those violent against the divine order, the blasphemers, the sodomites, the usurers.
Each expresses a way in which a person can reject the flow of life, by scorning meaning, distorting the body, or treating time as a commodity. Flames rain down upon them as they wander across burning sands. Not arbitrary fire, but symbolic of the spiritual dryness that follows.
When life is treated as purposeless or purely transactional, their torment reveals a principle.
When a soul abandons reverence, life loses its nourishment. Throughout this circle, Virgil continues to explain, not to justify punishment, but to unveil truth.
Every layer of hell is a mirror of consciousness, a landscape shaped by the energy we cultivate. Nothing here is random.
Everything is revealed. Dante feels the exhaustion of descent. He wonders how far it goes, how deep a human can fall. But Virgil assures him they must continue, because beyond the worst of darkness lies the possibility of transformation. They move on.
The eighth circle houses the fraudulent, those who used intellect to deceive.
This is not a single pit, but a vast terrain divided into 10 ditches, each revealing a different distortion of truth. Fraud requires intelligence, and because the rational mind can be used to manipulate reality, its distortions run deeper than those born of mere impulse or emotion.
Here Dante witnesses flatterers mired in filth, their false praises now inseparable from the waste they produced.
He sees diviners walking with their heads twisted backward, a reflection of their attempt to see the future while turning their back on the present. Their bodies now express the contortion of their inner life.
Next are the corrupt politicians, immersed in boiling tar, their greed hidden beneath the surface just as it was concealed in life. Then the hypocrites, walking under robes of glittering gold.
That conceal their crushing weight, a perfect image of the burden posed by pretending to be what one is not.
In a later ditch, thieves are tormented by serpents.
That both destroy and merge with their bodies, a mirror of how, in life, their actions disrupted the boundaries between self and other. Deception corrupts identity. The self that takes what is not theirs dissolves the meaning of mine and yours.
In this circle, there is no stable form. Identity melts, changes, reconfigures, a reflection of the chaos born from violating the dignity of others. Everywhere, Dante sees that the essence of fraud is the severing of authenticity.
The lesson is sharp. When truth is weaponized, the soul becomes lost in its own labyrinth.
Virgil leads Dante onward, until they reach the final ditch, where falsifiers, alchemists, perjurers, counterfeiters suffer diseases of the body.
That reveal the sickness of their intentions. Each punishment in this circle demonstrates that corruption begins in consciousness and later distorts the world. Dante is shaken. He begins to see hell not as a place where judgment is imposed, but as a place where inner reality becomes undeniable. It is psychological truth made visible.
The ninth circle awaits the deepest pit where betrayal resides.
This final realm is not fiery, but frozen. A lake of ice holds souls trapped at its core. The cold symbolizes the total absence of love, for betrayal is not the breaking of rules, but the breaking of trust.
Here Dante finds the traitors to family, to country, to guests, to benefactors. Each lies frozen in a position that reflects the nature of their violation.
At the very center, entombed in absolute stillness,
stands Lucifer, once the highest among angels, now the lowest among beings.
a being of enormous stature, three-faced and winged, but his wings do not lift him. They beat helplessly, freezing the lake around him even further.
He does not command.
He gnashes.
He does not roar.
He weeps.
He is not a ruler.
He is a prisoner of the very illusion he embraced. Separation. Pride, the belief that one could be separate from the source, is revealed as the deepest distortion.
Not because it offends a deity, but because it shatters the consciousness that perceives unity.
Pride isolates, and isolation becomes its own form of hell.
Dante sees that Lucifer does not dominate hell, he anchors it.
His suffering is not active torment, but absolute stagnation. He's frozen at the point farthest from light, immobile, unable to change because his identity is fixed in refusal. This is the ultimate mirror of shadow, not flame, but ice. Not chaos, but rigidity. The soul, trapped in its own certainty, cannot grow.
Dante studies this figure, not with hatred, but with comprehension.
Lucifer is not a monster. He is a being caught inside the final consequence of believing that the self can exist apart from its source.
This is the last lesson of the descent.
The deepest suffering is not pain, it is separation.
And just when it seems that this pit is the end, Virgil tells him a truth. To rise, you must pass through the center. There is no escape backward. The only way out of hell is deeper, through the core of shadow and out the other side. They climb, not upward, but downward, until downward becomes upward, until night becomes morning, until the frozen grip of separation gives way to movement.
That is where hell ends. In a passage, a turning, a possibility.
They emerge beneath the sky of the southern hemisphere, beneath stars unknown to Dante, and he realizes that the entire descent was preparation.
Shadow integrated, becomes strength. Only now can he begin the ascent.
Part 3. Emerging from the pit of hell, Dante does not leap into sunlight triumphant. He crawls through a narrow passageway carved into the fabric of the earth.
The climb is awkward, slow, disorienting. There is no applause, no proclamation of victory, only movement, and that quiet, essential truth. Liberation is rarely dramatic. It is the steady restoration of direction. When he steps once again beneath the open sky, the world has changed. But more importantly, so has he. The stars overhead are unfamiliar, for he now stands beneath a different hemisphere. This signals a profound inner shift. The person who descends is not the one who rises. Clarity arrives only after we have walked through what once terrified us. The inner cosmos reorganizes itself the moment we accept truth. Something subtle but powerful has occurred.
Dante is no longer the lost wanderer who stumbled into darkness, nor the trembling novice who clung to his guide.
He has seen the architecture of consequence, not as divine punishment, but as psychological necessity. He has witnessed the cost of self-deception and the quiet dignity of those who learned too late. He has looked upon every facet of the shadow and has not collapsed beneath its weight. That is the first transformation, the capacity to see without turning away. Virgil remains beside him, but their relationship is now altered. The guide who once pulled him through terror now walks with him as an equal through understanding.
This is the natural evolution of inner authority. In the beginning, we follow the voice of reason. In time, we embody it.
The descent through hell exposed something essential.
Every soul creates its own environment. The geography of the afterlife is the geography of consciousness. Hell is not a punishment.
It is what consciousness becomes when its distortions are no longer hidden. At each circle, Dante learned, unclaimed desire becomes storm. Unexamined appetite becomes mud. Possession without purpose becomes burden. Anger, outward or inward, becomes imprisonment. Rigid belief becomes a tomb. Violence becomes immersion in the very force unleashed. Self-hatred becomes disfigurement. Deception becomes fragmentation of identity. Betrayal becomes isolation without warmth. These are not theological statements. They are psychological observations.
Every realm of hell corresponds to an inner condition, and every inner condition arises from a choice, made consciously or unconsciously.
The deeper the intention, the deeper the consequence.
This realization shifts Dante's gaze from horror to compassion.
He sees that no one is in hell by accident. Each soul stands inside its own story, its own decision, its own chain of causality. No one is being tortured, they are simply inhabiting what they could not see in life. This is where the law of correspondence becomes impossible to ignore. As within, so without. The inner world is not private. It shapes reality. It defines experience. It projects itself into the world around it. Hell shows this principle stripped of denial. It is clarity, uncomfortable, confronting, but deeply honest. Having seen this, Dante recognizes something extraordinary.
If inner structure produces hell, then inner transformation must be the key to liberation.
The descent was not about judgment, it was about awareness. He sees that every soul in hell shares a common trait. Each one refused change. Some clung to desire, others to pride, others to ideology, others to power. But all held something so tightly that there was no room for the divine to flow through them. Rigidity, not wrongdoing, creates imprisonment. This understanding is the second transformation. Hell is not a divine sentence. It is a psychological shape, and shapes can change. as Dante gazes up the mountain of purgatory that now rises before him. He understands that the descent was preparation. Only those who face their shadow honestly are capable of ascent. You cannot climb toward truth while dragging illusions behind you.
Virgil tells him, "Now you know what must be purified."
Shadow integration is not suppression, it is clarity, and clarity gives direction. Dante realizes that hell was never about fear. Fear was just the doorway. Hell was about truth. Truth about the self, truth about the consequences of choices, truth about the price of unconsciousness. And now, with that truth in hand, he is ready to move upward. But before that ascent begins, something inside him must settle. He must integrate what he has seen. Integration is not immediate. It is a slow weaving of insight into the fabric of identity. He reflects on the souls he encountered, not as sinners to be judged, but as mirrors reflecting possibilities within himself. Each realm showed him a version of what happens when a human impulse goes unexamined.
Love becomes obsession. Appetite becomes slavery. Need becomes greed. Anger becomes corrosion. Doubt becomes denial. Intelligence becomes manipulation. Fear becomes betrayal.
These are not distant sins. They are familiar patterns. Hell revealed their trajectories.
And so the third transformation occurs. Dante stops seeing himself as separate from the souls he witnessed. He recognizes shared humanity.
He sees that their stories could have been his, and at times were. The descent strips away superiority. It teaches humility. He does not rise from hell as a judge, but as a student of consequence. This humility opens the doorway to grace. As he prepares to climb, Dante recognizes Virgil's true role.
Not to save him from hell, but to teach him how to read it.
The guide was never there to fight demons or to push away danger. He was there to illuminate structure, to show that everything, even suffering, follows a law. Understanding this law is the key to transformation. Most people fear the descent because they mistake shadow for doom. But Dante learns,
To face the shadow honestly is to disarm it. He did not descend to be punished. He descended to understand.
This is why the soul climbs out of hell without erasing what it saw. Nothing is dismissed. Nothing is denied. Everything is woven into wisdom. This is the beginning of empowerment. Not power over others, but power over the illusions
that once ruled him. The journey upward will refine him further, but the foundation of that refinement was laid in the depths. That is the paradox of awakening. Hell prepares the soul for heaven. The shadow makes room for light. The descent makes the ascent meaningful. As he stands on the threshold, between worlds, Dante feels a quiet strength pulsing inside him. He is no longer afraid of what he might find within himself. He has seen the worst, and he survived. There is a clarity now, a knowing that darkness, when confronted, loses its power to define. The descent was not his destruction. It was his initiation. Now he faces the mountain, not with arrogance, but with readiness. He understands that every step upward will ask something of him. It will ask him to release attachment, to let go of illusions, to refine his desires, to align with truth, even when it costs him comfort. This is the fourth transformation. Awakening is commitment. It is not a single moment of insight, but an ongoing devotion to live in accordance with what one has seen. Dante begins to climb. At first, the path is gentle. The air feels different, not heavy and suffocating like the depths, but fresh, alive with possibility. he notices something unexpected. The ascent feels familiar. It reminds him of something he once knew but forgot along the way. This is the nature of truth. When we find it, it feels like remembering. Hell revealed what is false. Now he climbs toward what is real. Yet he knows that the ascent holds its own trials. Shadow is not conquered in a single confrontation. It must be purified, integrated, made conscious again and again. But he is not the same man who first trembled at the gate. He has walked through darkness and listened to the stories of the lost. He has felt the architecture of consequence. He has touched the cold center of separation. Now, with humility in his bones and clarity in his gaze, he begins the long journey upward. Whether he will reach the summit or falter along the way is not promised. What is promised is that he will never again mistake avoidance for safety, nor fear for truth. He has seen that hell is not a threat, but a teacher, and that everything we face within ourselves is an invitation back to wholeness.
Part 4. As Dante begins the long climb away from the frozen core of hell, he doesn't leave Virgil behind, but the quality of their relationship changes in a subtle and essential way.
In the beginning, Virgil was the one who saw clearly, while Dante trembled. Dante leaned upon him, borrowed his courage, and walked in the shadow of his certainty. But now, after passing through every form of distortion and consequence, Dante has begun to see through his own eyes. This is how inner guidance matures. At first it feels external, a teacher, a book, a voice, a presence that knows more than we do. But guidance is never meant to remain outside us. It is a bridge, not a destination. Virgil embodies that bridge. The inner voice of reason, clarity, proportion, the steady intelligence that does not panic when the world darkens. He does not rescue Dante. He teaches him how to move as someone who trusts the structure of reality. There is a subtle distinction here. Reason is not the enemy of spirit. It is its ally. But reason alone cannot carry a soul all the way. It can illuminate structure, but not essence. It can point toward truth, but not dissolve into it.
Dante's descent revealed that reason works best when partnered with humility. When reason becomes arrogance, a rigid belief system, a prison of certainty, it becomes the very thing that trapped the heretics in the sixth circle.
But when reason keeps the heart open and the mind curious, it becomes a lantern that lights the path through the dark. Virgil is that lantern. He has shown Dante that every realm of hell follows an order, that nothing is chaos, nothing is random. Even suffering unfolds according to law. That recognition alone marks a profound shift in consciousness.
When a person realizes that all inner states have structure, that anger, desire, fear, and pride each produce predictable results, they stop living reactively and begin living intentionally.
This is the beginning of self-authority. To walk through hell with a guide is to learn the architecture of the inner world. To climb out of hell is to begin taking responsibility for one's relationship to that architecture. As Dante rises, he reflects on how every soul he met still clung to some part of their identity, a story, a belief, a desire, a wound. Something they refused to release, even as it imprisoned them. Now he sees more clearly.
Every chain in hell is a hand that refuses to let go.
Hell is not enforced on the soul. It is maintained by the soul. This insight is the seed of freedom. For if the soul creates its own bondage, then the soul can uncreate it. Nothing about Dante's descent taught him to fear punishment. It taught him to respect truth. He recognizes that every circle reflected a misalignment, love twisted, reason overgrown, desire untempered, identity clung to past its usefulness. Each distortion hardened into reality because the soul refused to change. But change is always possible while one is alive, while breath still moves through the body and choice is still available. And so, with each step upward, Dante feels that possibility expand. He begins to recognize Virgil not just as a guide, but as a part of himself. Not a separate intelligence, but an aspect of his own consciousness that he is finally listening to. He realizes that the wisdom he attributed to Virgil was always within him, waiting for his willingness to emerge. This is the essence of inner guidance. It becomes you. Its voice slowly blends into your own until you cannot separate teacher from student. Yet Virgil remains, not to command now, but to accompany.
His presence is quieter, more spacious.
He answers fewer questions, not because he knows less, but because Dante understands more. This shift marks an important phase in any spiritual path. The moment when the seeker stops outsourcing clarity and begins trusting their own perception. Self-authority is not rebellion, it is alignment. It is the ability to discern truth without collapsing into doubt or arrogance. It is the capacity to act from the center rather than from fear or compulsion. Dante is not yet finished. He is not fully free. But he has crossed the threshold where awakening becomes self-propelled.
He does not need to be pushed. He does not need to be convinced. He has seen.
And once you see, you cannot pretend you are blind. He feels gratitude for Virgil, not because the guide saved him, but because the guide showed him that he was capable of walking through darkness without giving his power away.
The greatest gift of a teacher is not protection, it is preparation.
Dante now carries the structure of hell within him as knowledge. He understands the laws at work. Nothing is taken from you, you hold it. Nothing is given to you, you create it. There is no punishment, only reflection. There is no exile, only consequence. Nothing is final, everything evolves. This is why the descent was necessary. Without it, he would have climbed blindly, still carrying illusions that would sabotage his ascent. Hell is the purification of vision.
So when Dante looks to the mountain ahead, he does not see threat. He sees invitation. The climb will be difficult, but difficulty no longer frightens him. What frightened him most was not effort, but the idea of looking inward and finding something he could not face.
He has now faced it, and he did not shatter. He learned. He understands that much of what he feared was only the resistance to seeing, not the seeing itself.
This is the heart of shadow integration.
The courage to witness oneself without collapsing into shame or denial. As Dante continues upward, he notices that the world has grown quieter. The noise that once dominated his mind, fear, doubt, confusion, has softened. His inner landscape feels less combative, more coherent. He has not conquered his shadow. He has simply stopped treating it as an enemy. This shift allows him to relate to himself with more tenderness. He sees that the souls in hell were not monsters. They were simply unable to release what no longer served them. The same is true of every human being. And so compassion grows within him. Not the sentimental compassion of pity, but the grounded compassion of understanding. He no longer needs to distance himself from those he once judged. He recognizes that any soul can fall into distortion when pain goes unexamined and illusion goes unchallenged.
The descent into hell has made him more human, not less. It has given him a deeper respect for the delicate nature of choice, and for the strength required to remain aligned.
Alignment, he realizes, is the true definition of virtue. Not moral correctness, but inner coherence. A person aligned with truth does not need commandments. Their life expresses harmony naturally. This is the early blossoming of empowerment. Not dominance over others, but sovereignty within oneself. As Dante climbs, the memory of each circle becomes a compass.
When desire stirs, he remembers the storm. When appetite whispers, he remembers the mud. When possession seduces, he remembers the weight. When anger rises, he remembers the swamp. When certainty hardens, he remembers the burning tomb. When despair visits, he remembers the forest where Virgil found him.
They guide him. These memories do not haunt him. Hell has turned from prison to teacher. The climb continues, step by step, breath by breath. No epiphany lifts him to the peak. No miracle shortcuts the process. He climbs because there is no other way. Growth is not a flight. It is a practice. And Dante now carries within him the most important tool a human can possess: the willingness to see. This willingness is the seed of freedom. It is the doorway through which all transformation enters. He understands that the journey ahead, toward purification, toward illumination, toward unity, is only possible because he descended first. The paradox of the path is revealed. You can only rise as deeply as you have gone down. The descent gave him depth. The climb will give him height. And together, they form the wholeness of his being.
Final part. As Dante continues upward from the depths of hell, he realizes that the journey has shifted from survival to understanding. Where before each step felt like a confrontation with forces beyond him, now each step feels like a return, a quiet homecoming to the parts of himself he once refused to meet.
The air grows lighter. The weight he carried, the fear, the confusion, the sense of unworthiness begins to loosen. Not because the world has changed, but because he has. The darkness beneath him does not vanish. It becomes foundation. It becomes memory that keeps him anchored in truth. He sees that the descent was never about punishment. It was about knowledge. To truly know oneself, one must walk through the layers of identity and witness the consequences of the stories one lives. Only then can a person be trusted with freedom, because freedom without self-knowledge is simply another word for blindness. And blindness always leads back to bondage, even when disguised as autonomy. So Dante climbs, no longer afraid of falling, because he has already fallen and found that falling is not the end. He survived the deepest night. He learned to walk in the dark. He learned that terror dissolves the moment truth is allowed to speak. That knowledge becomes a quiet confidence, not pride, but presence.
He understands now that hell is not beneath us, it is within us. A psychological realm that opens whenever we act from illusion, whenever we cling to what harms, whenever we refuse to listen to the part of us that knows better.
Likewise, he senses that the ascent toward heaven is also within us, not a destination above the stars, but a movement of consciousness toward clarity, humility, and love. He does not yet know how the journey will unfold, but he no longer demands to know. Certainty is not his anchor anymore, trust is. The image of Lucifer at the center of ice stays with him, not as a monster, but as a metaphor.
Dante saw that the greatest suffering comes not from fire, but from the refusal to move. The frozen king of the ninth circle is not frightening because he is powerful, but because he is powerless.
He cannot change. He cannot repent. He cannot soften.
He is locked in the self he insisted upon. Dante recognizes the warning. To cling to a fixed identity is to build hell within the soul. Life is movement. Spirit is change. Being is flow. To resist this is to freeze. And so as he climbs, Dante vows, silently, not to become the prisoner of certainty. Not to let pride take root in him. Not to confuse knowledge with wisdom or power with truth. He carries the memory of those below not as judgment, but as compassion. Every soul he saw believed they were right. Every soul he met believed they had no choice. And yet, every soul was creating their own consequence without realizing it. This is the most difficult teaching of the descent. The world is not happening to us. We are happening to the world. This understanding does not demand guilt. It invites responsibility. It calls us to examine not whether we are good or bad, but whether we are conscious. Unconsciousness, not wickedness, is the true source of suffering. So Dante climbs with awakened eyes. He feels Virgil's presence beside him, steady, patient, proud. The guide who once led now walks alongside. Dante senses that soon even Virgil will let go because no guide remains forever. The highest form of teaching is to make oneself unnecessary. But that moment is not yet. For now, their companionship is quiet nourishment. The path bends upward like a slow-breathing promise. The world opens inch by inch. And as Dante climbs, he feels something rising within him. Not ambition, not certainty, but a widening of perception. He begins to recognize that hell was only one half of the mirror.
To see the whole of reality, one must also climb toward its opposite. But this climb has already begun inside him.
He is no longer the frightened soul who begged to turn back. He has become a witness to suffering, a witness to consequence, a witness to the law woven into every breath of existence. He now sees that every soul in hell was trapped not by God, but by themselves. And the key they lacked was not purity, or heroism or ritual, but honesty. Honesty with oneself is the doorway out of every inferno. Those who could not be honest remained frozen, storm-tossed, drowned, burdened. Those who dared honesty could have walked out at any time. But honesty demands humility, and humility demands surrender. The descent taught him that surrender is not defeat. It is alignment. He feels that alignment now as a subtle quiet in his body, a recognition that he does not walk alone. That the same intelligence that guided him through the darkest circles now guides each step upward. This presence is not outside him. It is within.
Virgil is simply its face. Self-trust begins to grow.
Not the reckless trust of ego, but the grounded trust of someone who has seen darkness up close and knows that light is deeper still. Dante walks thoughtful, steady. He understands that every human being must at some point take this journey inward.
Some will do it through crisis, some through discipline, some through love.
But all will eventually face the parts of themselves they do not wish to see. This is not punishment. It is initiation. As he climbs, he senses that hell is not behind him. It lives within him still, but it no longer controls him. Shadow integrated becomes strength. The very qualities that once threatened to enslave him
now serve as teachers, each whispering its lesson. Desire can be wild, but it can also be devotion. Appetite can be numbing, but it can also be gratitude. Possession can be greed, but it can also be stewardship. Anger can be destruction, but it can also be boundary. Reason can be rigid, but it can also be clarity. Ambition can be betrayal, but it can also be service.
The descent has shown Dante that no human quality is evil. Only unconsciousness is. Everything within us can be transformed when brought into awareness. This is the final transformation of the descent, the reconciliation of opposites. Nothing within him is an enemy now. All is potential. He reaches a small plateau and pauses. Below him, hell sleeps, no longer threatening, but still present as memory and map. Above him, the mountain of purification waits.
He breathes, feeling the weight of what he has survived and the lightness of what he is becoming.
He knows the journey is far from over, but he also knows that what lies ahead is no longer a question of fear, but of devotion.
He begins to move again, and this time the step is chosen, not driven.
There is no rush, no dread, only presence. He understands that the descent was necessary not to break him, but to give him depth. Without depth, height is unstable. The deeper the roots, the higher the branches. The wider the shadow, the brighter the light. He turns once more toward the path ahead, carrying within him the truth of the underworld and the quiet knowing that the soul does not rise by avoiding darkness, but by walking through it with eyes open. And with that step forward, the descent is complete. It has done what it came to do: strip illusion, reveal truth, and prepare the mind for transformation. What lies ahead will refine him further, but for now, there is only this truth.
Only those who dare to descend learn how to rise.
If this journey into the depths of consciousness moved you, sit with it. Sometimes the greatest wisdom is born in the places we least want to go. To keep exploring teachings like this, subscribe to Positive Vortex. It helps this work reach more seekers. And if you'd like to support the channel directly, you can click the thanks button below. Every contribution helps us continue creating long-form transformative content. Until next time, may your descent always lead you to the light.